Okay, it's 5:33 now, so I think we can get started. Appreciate everyone coming to the meeting. I'm Matthew Carpenter with Parker Poe, holding this meeting on behalf of the developer, Merit Group LLC. Got several folks on the phone with me tonight from the development team. Paul Mugnana with Merit Group and Rick Felice, the developers. Bob Zumwalt with Kinley Horn, our landscape architect. And then also, I believe Jamie Schwadler is on from our office. And so again, thanks for coming tonight. To provide a little context for this meeting, this is a pre-filing neighborhood meeting for a potential rezoning request on North Salem Street. And we're calling the project the North Salem Street Mixed Use PUD. And so this is the very first step in a long development process. The rezoning is the first process towards developing a site. And this meeting is occurring before we've even filed a rezoning application. So this is really just the first step of like I said, a very long entitlement and development process. And so really the purpose of tonight's meeting is to present our project and then hear your feedback as we put together our application and prepare for submittal. And so to that end, I'll give a short presentation, go over a few slides of what we plan to do with the site and sort of how we've gotten there. And then our team will be available to answer any of your questions. This property is an assemblage on North Salem Street at the corner of All-Wheel Drive and North Salem Street. It's a large 32-acre tract. And you can see it's actually 16 different tax parcels. And so it's a lot of smaller tax parcels that come together to make one 32-acre tract. It's just south of US 64, sort of along the North Salem Street corridor as you come into downtown Apex from US 64. And it's sort of unusual to say, but this is an infill development site, which just means that the sites surrounding it are already developed. You can see Crossroads Ford of Apex to the north, Haddon Hall to the west, Haddon Place to the south, Thales Academy on the other side of North Salem Street, and then the villages of Apex here. So it's a little unusual to see a site of this size in a location like this that's undeveloped. But we know it's been that way a long time. And I think as hopefully you'll see in a moment, we acknowledge the importance of this site and the importance of its location as you enter Apex on North Salem Street. And I think the sellers do as well. A lot of this land is still owned by the Goodwin family, and at one time the majority of it was owned by the Goodwin family, who have deep roots in Apex and have been a part of Apex for, I believe, at least 100 years. And so they're very involved in this process and are part of the project. The current zoning here is residential agricultural, and you can see those designations in green. And actually there are two similar designations, residential agricultural and then rural residential. And those are essentially holding districts. They only permit large lot, single family homes of an acre or more. And so really undeveloped land or land that was once more rural farmland in Wake County and Apex is typically zoned residential agricultural or rural residential, basically meaning that any development of this site is going to require a rezoning. And so the district that we're proposing to rezone the property to is planned unit development conditional. And you'll see throughout the presentation, we use PUD for short to abbreviate that. And the purpose of a planned unit development district is really for larger sites like this that really require careful planning and collaboration between the developer, town staff, and stakeholders. And so that's why we've chosen to do a PUD. It's really probably the most intensive rezoning process. As you'll see, once we file our application and some of the slides tonight, the PUD rezoning submittals include several different documents, a plan set that shows generally where the uses will go, and then also a PUD text document that sets forth specific rezoning conditions that guide development of the property. And if the case is eventually approved, those PUD text conditions will be binding on the property. They're not related to any specific development. Once they're adopted, there are binding requirements on the property, regardless of which developer develops the site. And so that's why we've chosen the PUD district, is because we believe it's appropriate here to spend that additional time and work through with staff, what uses and intensities go where, and what works best with this site. And so once we file our rezoning application, the main policy document that the town, town staff, town council, and really everyone uses to evaluate rezoning request is the 2045 land use map. And the land use map is again a policy document that the town has that puts designations on all property in Apex and its planning jurisdiction for essentially what the town and stakeholders want to see that site developed for in the future. And so this particular land use map, I believe, was adopted in 2019. And it was the product of a number of stakeholder meetings and a long planning process between, again, neighbors, staff, elected officials, and other members of the community. And so because of the importance of the land use map, and Apex specifically sticks to its land use map fairly often, we start with the land use map when we're looking at new sites and what uses go where. And so to explain the designation of this site a little bit, when you see 3 stripes on the land use map, it means that the land use map is calling for a mix of uses in that location. And so you can see here the mixed use area extends from US 64 south, and this particular site has a number of designations. So the red stripes mean commercial uses, and you see those cover the entire site. The blue stripes mean office employment uses, and then the cream color and the orange are different residential densities. The orange is high density residential, and then the cream color is medium density residential. And so really what the land use map is calling for on this site is a mix of uses, with the most dense residential here at the corner of the intersection of All-Wheel Drive and North Salem Street. And so just like we do in a lot of other cases, we started here with the land use map, and the land use map is what we used to develop the plan before you. So this is our PUD concept plan. As I mentioned, this document will be part of our rezoning submittal, and then if approved, will be a condition on the site. And what we've tried to do with this plan is lay out the uses that are envisioned by the land use map in a way that's logical, meets the density that's envisioned by the land use map and the mix of uses, but also be mindful of the existing single-family established neighborhoods around the perimeter of the site. And so you can see in different colors, we have different districts across the site, and those districts have allowed different types of housing and uses. So starting from the corner here, if you remember the land use map that we were just looking at, showed this as sort of the most intense area of the site. And that's what we're showing on our plan. So the MU1 district allows multifamily and also non-residential uses. So the idea there is an apartment building or one or more apartment buildings with ground floor retail and non-residential uses at the corner where the land use map asks for the most intensity. Then stepping over to the left, we also have another multifamily district, MF3. That district has multifamily but doesn't have non-residential uses. And so the idea is for the non-residential to be located on the corner. Then if you move south of the MU1 district, you see MR2. The idea there is to have a mix of multifamily and townhomes. And then south of MR2, TH5 and TH4 those are townhome districts. And so the idea again is to transition down in height, in density, and intensity as you move from the north of the site, which is close to the car dealership, to these existing single family homes. And so these will be townhouses in yellow. And so before I get any further on the uses, just keep in mind that this plan is just, and the rezoning process is just determining which uses should be permitted where. The actual layout of lots and houses and buildings will happen at later stages of development, site plan and subdivision. So really, the purpose of the rezoning is to determine are these uses appropriate here. And so to call out a couple other important aspects of the plan, you can see there's an existing pond here in the center of the site. Our goal is to keep that pond to serve as an amenity for the neighborhood. We don't know yet if the pond has the structural integrity that we need to keep it. So there's further investigation and due diligence is needed to determine that. But our initial plans are to keep the pond and also keep some open space area around the pond. And so here there's a lot of tree cover. There's some riparian buffers. And so the idea would be that this is more of a natural area rather than the fully developable districts elsewhere on the site. A couple of other important points. Oh, and while I'm on the topic of the green area, the town does require resource conservation area. And so at least 20% of the site, and I believe if we mass grade the site, it has to be 25%, has to be set aside as resource conservation area. And so those are natural wooded areas. On this site, there are wooded areas. So some of those RCAs would be wooded areas that are untouched and can't be graded in or constructed in. And so we'll set those aside. Those locations of those won't be determined until site plan and subdivision after rezoning, but they are requirements of the UDO. And then in terms of access, we're showing a couple of potential access points on North Salem Street. I believe the main site access will be limited to right in, right out only. That's at least what we think preliminarily. The stub streets that are along the property line, the one to the south here, we're showing a connection. And here we're still discussing exactly what to do with Charlie Downs Lane. The UDO requirement is that we connect to all stub streets. So the town is going to require us to connect to the stub streets. The only way that we can not connect is if we add language in our rezoning that says that we don't have to. So what we're proposing here on Charlie and Downs Lane is a cul-de-sac, and so we wouldn't make a vehicular connection there, but we would have a pedestrian connection into our site. We don't know yet if the town is going to go for that or not. They typically they want to see vehicular connectivity. And so that may be an ongoing discussion throughout the rezoning process. I know often existing neighborhoods don't want those streets connected. And so it's really, it's in a way not our decision. It's up to, what the town will allow us to do.
Hey, Matthew.
Yep,
Just one quick clarification. The main access off of North Salem, it's a right in, right out, and a left in.
right here.
If you're
Okay,
headed north, you can turn left in.
right. Thanks, Bob.
Hmm?
That's a good
Sure.
point. Anything else you want to call out on the plan, Bob, while we're here?
No, I think you got it. Thank you.
Okay. Um, And so that's the bulk of what we have in terms of the plan. Our rezoning timeline, again, this is the pre-filing neighborhood meeting. And so we're holding that, and then filing deadlines are the first of each month. So December 1st is when we're aiming to submit our rezoning application. After that, it'll be several months of staff review. Staff will issue comments, and then we'll resubmit our case. We'll also go to the Environmental Advisory Board, which is an apex specific board that recommends specific conditions to speak to the environmental impacts of the project. And then eventually, after we've gone through several rounds of staff comments, resubmittals to respond to those staff comments, we will be scheduled for planning board. The planning board will hold a public hearing, and the public hearing, anyone can speak, we'll present the project, and then the planning board will vote to make a recommendation about the case to town council. And then typically 2 weeks after that, town council will hold a public hearing and then make the ultimate decision of the case. And then after the rezoning, again, we still would need to go through site plan and subdivision submittals, and then building permits and construction drawings, which could take as much as another year or two. So again, this is just the very start of the process. And so we're happy to hear your questions, feedback. My contact information is on the screen even after tonight. If you have any questions, you can call me or email me. And so at this point, we're happy to take questions. I see several folks have already asked questions in the chat, so I'll go ahead and start there. And so if you have a question, just put it in the chat. I'll read it aloud so that everyone can hear it. And then we'll go through as many questions as we can. The first question is what is the intended height of these structures? And so right now, the tallest buildings will be in MU1. I think we're looking at around 5 stories. We haven't finalized the height for MU1, but as you can imagine, those buildings are a little bit taller because they do have that non-residential component. The townhomes will likely be 3 stories, max height of 3 stories, and so the idea again is to transition down height as you move from the corner towards the existing neighborhoods to the south and west. The MF3 height, I believe do you know the height for that district, Bob?
I think the max height in that district, let me check it.
Okay.
Make sure I give you the right answer. I'll do it right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, no problem.
Go ahead and go on to the next question, and
Yeah,
I'll.
the next question is, it says, I noticed that the zone labeled TH5 on this map does not have an area labeled as wetland, but the one we got in the mail did. Why did that change? Bob, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think right now we're going off of data from GIS and other sources. As part of the process, we'll do an actual, wetland and stream determination. And so we'll get an official determination of where the wetlands and streams are. We don't have that yet, right, Bob?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so that's why the label was taken off. We don't have the final determination, and so we didn't want to mislead anyone. The next question is, in the green area, what do those oval areas with dots represent?
Those are wetlands.
Those are potential wetlands, and those are taken from publicly available data we have, right, Bob?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. With regard to MF3, but right now, what it looks like is it would be a 4 or 5 story split because the topo falls off toward the creek from all-wheel drive. So the building as viewed from all-wheel drive would look like a 4-story building, and then as the topography falls down, it would step down kind of like a daylight basement house and go down to a 5-story.
Right. So the next question is, who determines impact to traffic on Salem and through Haddon Hall? That's a good question, Ron. So as part of this project, we'll do a traffic impact analysis. And so we have transportation engineers that are working on that. And that will be filed with our rezoning application. The scope of that is worked out with our engineer and the town's transportation engineers. So before they even prepare that study, they discuss the scope with the town, and then we file the TIA, and then the town transportation staff reviews the TIA, and then issues comments and recommendations on recommended road improvements for our project to mitigate the traffic that it's creating. And so not to get too technical, but in the traffic study, based on the uses that we're proposing, the traffic study will show a number. It'll have all the trips from existing development in this area, and then it will plug our trips into that scenario, and find out where the delays and the pinch points are, and that's how they recommend improvements is where the worst delays and where is this project making the existing issues worse, so that we need to do mitigation. And so we'll have those recommended road improvements a little later in the rezoning process. It normally takes transportation staff a month or two to fully review the TIA and then make their recommendations. Um, Laura asked, do you have any idea on the total number of units that will be built? I believe, Bob, do you have those numbers in front of you on our most recent totals? I think it's is it,
I can pull them up. Yeah.
yeah, I've got them.
You want me to?
Yeah, that'd be great.
So it's a maximum of, this is just a max. It's not the actual number. A maximum of 270 apartments, a maximum of 205 townhomes, and a maximum of 25,000 square feet of ground floor commercial or non-residential.
Right. And so again, what Bob is saying is those are just our zoning maximums. And so we'll have a better idea of what we can actually fit on the site once we get to site plan subdivision. And because when you fully lay out the site, you have to account for things like the resource conservation area, the play lawns, and other apex code requirements that also tend to limit the overall density that you can fit on a site. So those are our early numbers and our maximums. So we won't be any higher than that, but the final numbers will come later in the process.
Yeah, those are the numbers that we will run in the traffic study.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So the next question is on the map we received in the mail along the Haddon Place area. It states the green square is an active recreation area. The color on the map you're showing looks different. Has the plan for that changed? What does an active recreation area mean? Um, do you know exactly, Bob, where that was shown? And so, I mean, just in terms of the overall plan changes, since this is a pre-application neighborhood meeting, the plan is changing, and so we're working on it and cleaning things up and finalizing things as we prepare to file December 1st, and then the plan will definitely change after December 1st as staff reviews it and adds additional comments. So it's certainly a working plan, and so whenever you see changes, it's not sort of a what happened. It's the plan will continue changing throughout the process.
Yeah, it's really the plan has not changed. All it is a
Yeah.
refinement. It's now, instead of calling it out specifically as active, it's called resource conservation area. And actually, active open space is a category of resource conservation area. So I'm sure if you're familiar with that edge
All
of the
right.
property,
Yeah.
there's that tree that's so pretty. So the plan is still to preserve the tree and to have the area underneath it some form of open space.
Okay. And so right. So the change is just exactly what open space classification are we
That's
gonna
right. It's just
label it? Right.
semantics. Yeah.
Right. Um, the next question is any consideration for larger single family homes, which we are lacking in Apex versus townhomes in area TH4 and TH5. We have looked at different iterations of the plans. I will say that the land use map here uh, does not call for single family generally. It does call for medium density, which allows single family, but with the high density designation, and then I believe medium density is up to 6 units an acre. To achieve that density, it really requires townhomes. And in terms of the demand and the supply of single family homes, I know for a long time the main uh, really the residential character of Apex was largely single family homes, and only until recently have more townhomes be built. And so I know, with a lot of new townhomes being built, it probably feels like there are a ton of townhomes, but Apex is still characterized by a large amount of single family subdivisions. Um, the next question is, does multifamily include 2 to 4 um, family homes? I believe so. So the plan, when we use multifamily in our zoning materials, we mean an apartment building is how we're discussing this. The UDO definition would include, I believe, two buildings of 2 to 4 units if the building is located on one lot. I think those would be considered multifamily. Is that your understanding too, Bob?
I'm actually not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the plan is not to have two.
Right, right. That's not what we're meaning when we're using multifamily, but the UDO definition would, those would be considered multifamily, I believe. Um, the next question from Jason Stanko is the land already sold? If not, is the sale contingent on rezoning? Is single family housing being considered? If not, why? Population density is far exceeding infrastructure. What are the plans to accommodate traffic? Um, so again, the land is the developer is under contract to purchase the land, and is working through the entitlement process. I just went through, we have looked at different sketch plans for the site that to get the density the land use map recommends. Um, Townhomes are really required to get that density. The next question about population density exceeding infrastructure. Um, a lot in North Carolina anyway, and in the Triangle, a lot of infrastructure is actually built by private development projects. And so, for example, we haven't gotten that far yet, but this project will be required to widen North Salem Street to the ultimate section that's shown on the town's long-range transportation plan. And like I said, once the TIA results come back, there will also be recommendations for improvements, things like turn lanes that are needed to mitigate our traffic. So a lot of the infrastructure is put in by developers. I know as growth comes quickly, at times there are areas, sort of areas that have been developed, separated by areas that haven't been developed, and so the roads and the infrastructure, the character of those roads and width, et cetera, really change as you drive through town. So I understand that. Um, See, the next question from Jasmine is, traffic congestion is already challenging because of the school and nearby neighborhoods, and we anticipate that the new development will significantly increase vehicle volume. Are there plans to expand and improve the roads to support this growth? I think I did just partially answer that. So there are two separate things I mentioned. The In Apex, when you file a rezoning request, you're required to widen the roads along your frontage to the ultimate street section shown on the town's long-range transportation plan. That requirement is separate from the TIA process that I just mentioned. We'll also go through the TIA process, which will recommend um, additional road improvements to mitigate our traffic. And we don't have those yet, but we will have those once the TIA is fully reviewed by town staff and they make their recommendation. Next question is from Michael. Is there a maximum height restriction associated with each zone? MU1, MR2, MF3, TH4, TH5. Yes, there will be. We're working through those different height restrictions right now. Like I said, we're showing 3 stories in TH4 and TH5. Those will be townhomes. And then, depending on whether multifamily or townhomes are built here, likely 3 story townhomes, and then some multifamily. MU1 would be our tallest district, with heights probably closer to 5 or 6 stories. depending on the final sort of scale and design of the buildings. And then MF3 would be slightly shorter apartment buildings. I think Bob mentioned 4 or 5 stories, depending on the grade, because the grade does change a lot in that district. So yes, we're working through those standards. When we submit on December 1st, you'll see height maximums for each district exactly as you're describing. So we haven't finalized those yet, but that's generally what we've been discussing. Next question is from Karen. I back up to this development on Britley. Traffic is outrageous at certain times of the day. Very difficult to get out of our neighborhood. Thales cars already park in our neighborhood on Britley and use neighborhood as throughput to Highway 55. So I didn't see a question in there, but we do we're certainly aware of the traffic from Thales, and the town is too, and that their queuing is part queuing in terms of just vehicles lining up is part of our TIA. So all that is being taken into account in our study and discussed amongst the traffic engineers, and then hopefully from the TIA will come up a plan to help address it. So. Um,
Matthew, I think just one thing
yeah,
to
yeah,
mention maybe is the connection through Street B will be another way to get to the signal at
it's a good point.
on Salem Street and bypass kind of the queuing for Thales.
Right, right. So yeah, we will make this connection to the south, which will go through our site to all-wheel drive. So if it's a time of the day when school traffic is particularly bad, you could get out to all-wheel drive and hopefully around it. The next question from Francis is, what does right in, right out mean with regards to the entrance? It's I may have sort of said right, but it's right. So like right, left, and it's just where you see right in, right out. It means that you can only turn right into the site and right out of the site. You can't make left turns out of the site or into the site. And it's a way that the town and NCDOT help uh, prevent traffic congestion in certain locations where there are several driveways near other existing driveways. Um, the next question is from Cheryl. How will you work to address housing needs for people with different incomes in Apex? Example, young families, seniors, teachers, public safety workers, healthcare workers, or town employees. So just from the start, we're trying to address affordability by having different types of housing in the same project. So which helps provide options. So I think one of the earlier questions was why haven't you considered single family homes? Well, there are a lot of single family homes in Apex available, and they're very, very expensive. And so the idea here is to offer a mix of housing types, townhomes potentially with different square footages and layouts that would have different prices, multifamily apartment housing to help with again for people who are at a different stage of life, or maybe they're not ready to buy a home for another reason. And then also I think adding these housing types in a location that's really close to downtown Apex and near goods and services. There's transit available. There's bus service available here, I believe, and also it's really convenient to US 64. So I think from an affordability standpoint, it's the place to be putting additional housing types. We're also aware of the town's initiatives on affordable housing and the affordable housing policy recommendations, and that will be part of the discussion too as we move through the rezoning process. So appreciate the question. So the next question is why apartment/townhomes versus ranch style single family homes? I think I've answered that, but part of it is the land use map. Part of it is to provide additional housing types and housing choices. And part of it too is the cost of land in Apex. And so all those things go together to call for additional housing density in this location. The next question is, how do you intend to protect and preserve the existing old growth trees on the property? Um, so we'll do a tree survey as part of this rezoning application that'll call out trees. I believe, Bob, a lot of the existing tree coverage is shown in this area, right? The green
Yeah,
area.
there's a bit of it in there. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And so part of the way we do that and the way Apex does that is through resource conservation area. And so for this site, I believe the UDO requires 20%. And if we mass grade the site, which means we grade multiple lots at a time, there's a definition in the UDO, but that's generally what it means. Then it's an additional 5%. And so that's a quarter of our site that we have to set aside, and can't touch, can't grade in, can't develop. And so we try to lay out certain areas to the greatest extent possible of RCA where there's existing tree coverage, and those areas will be protected throughout the process. That there has to be fencing around them when the site's graded, and when construction's done. The next question is from Sasha. What do you intend to do to protect and preserve the existing wildlife on the property, particularly given that there have been numerous sightings of protected species on the property? Again, right now we're just at zoning, and so as we go through the process, we'll do additional studies. And a lot of this area, a lot of this site is cleared already, and there are people living on it. So it's not, even though they're larger, older lots, it's not a completely undeveloped site. I don't know, Bob, if there are any additional studies that you know of that we'll do.
I'm not aware of anything
Yeah.
else.
Um, let's see. Next question is, could you repeat those unit numbers? Um, yes. It's 275 and 205, I believe, right, Bob?
270
Yeah,
townhome
270.
units and 205 townhouse houses and 25,000 square feet of non-residential commercial or office.
Okay, the next question is from Francis. I'm a resident on Britley Way. It is extremely hard to turn north onto Salem Street from Britley, primarily because of the poorly planned in and out for Thales. I'm very supportive of higher density housing, but you must plan for how to mitigate what this will do to traffic. So I think we've covered that. We are planning for exactly that through the TIA process. So we'll update you when we have those results. We will hold a second neighborhood meeting that will occur before the planning board meeting. And so the idea is to update you on the progress at that meeting before we go to planning board. You can also always call or email with any questions, or if you just want to know the status of the case.
I do think also the street B
Yep,
giving you access to the signal will make it
right.
easier to go left out of your neighborhood.
The next question is, does any plan or hope exist? This is from Kay. Does any plan or hope exist to protect property values on Britley Way? If so, what are they? Or can you explain how you feel this will not negatively impact property value on Britley Way? Um, Again, I'm not an appraiser, and so I can't tell you exactly what the property values are, but I do know how expensive land and single family homes are in Apex. And there are areas all over Apex where there are townhomes adjacent to existing single family neighborhoods, and where those houses sell every day. So I don't think, and we hear both, that it'll make property values go up and make property values go down. Again, we've tried to phase the site down in intensity as you get closer to the single family neighborhoods. And again, this particular rezoning hasn't been in the works for as long, but the land use map designation has been on the books for a long time. And the land use map calls for mixed use here. And so it's not a situation where we're asking for a significant departure from the land use map, where say the land use map calls for low density and we're proposing apartments. This is what the long-term plans have been for this site for some time. Um, The next question is, why is the proposed buffer between Haddon Hall and the development only 20 feet? This is the bare minimum requirement. Um, I don't believe, Bob, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe it's the bare minimum. I think the requirement is 15-foot buffer. But that particular buffer is also adjacent to the area where we're showing the existing pond, potential wetlands and stream buffers. And so even though there's a 20-foot type B buffer, there may be a much larger area of separation there. Um,
That's right.
okay. The next question is adding, it's from Tina, adding 400 families there seems excessive. The zoning regions were established for a reason. I may have missed it, but what is the impetus to alter the current zoning? Um, Again, the current zoning is residential agricultural, which is really a holding district. The land use map, which guides, future development of property, shows quite a bit of density, commercial and office uses here. And as I mentioned, it actually shows commercial uses across the entire site. And so we're not proposing that. What we've tried to develop is a plan that achieves the density and uses envisioned by the land use map, but also respects the adjacent neighborhoods by transitioning down, with townhouses as you get closer, and by keeping the existing pond in this area. The next question from Anne, are all these units going to have the option to use our HOA amenities since the proposal has them connected to our neighborhood? How will the current layout curtail people cutting through neighborhood to avoid traffic? Um, so I'll answer that in two parts. First question, are we going to use your HOA amenities? We couldn't do that without your permission, and so no, that is not the plan. The street connections don't have anything to do with the HOA. Those street connections are public street rights of way, and the town requires us to connect. So that's those streets are separate from your private HOA, which we're not trying to disturb. So, and then the next question was, how will we curtail people cutting through the neighborhood to avoid traffic? Again, they're public streets, and so we can't prevent folks from driving down public streets. There are options for things like traffic calming that you can ask the town for that help slow cars down as you drive down the public streets. But I also think, based on this site's location, that there aren't a lot of destinations that would be quicker, I believe, by going through the neighborhood than either going out to all-wheel drive or North Salem Street. Because if you go down North Salem, turn right, you can get straight to downtown, or you can get right on US 64 to the north. Uh, so really what the town envisions in terms of connecting the stub streets is that the interconnectivity helps all drivers and overall traffic flow throughout the town. The next question is, what information can you provide on the buffer zones for TH4 and TH5? They appear to meet only the bare minimum standards. I think I went through that. Again, the standard for the buffer on the south side, the UDO requirement, I believe, would be 15 feet. And we're showing a 20-foot buffer. I do know that these neighborhoods were built at a time where there's no perimeter buffer at all on the south side. So we're trying to provide that buffer on our site. But again, we have a lot to lay out on our site, and so we're still working on the site layout, buffers, and this is what we're showing on our plans at this time. What process will be in place for excavating the site? Will you need to do any blasting as part of the process? If so, what steps will you take to ensure Haddon Hall is protected? So just first to answer your question about timing, no grading would happen until at least a year, 2 years from now. Whether there's blasting required would be determined by if there's rock on site. And I don't think we have enough information to know if there's a lot of rock yet, do we, Bob?
I don't think we do.
Yeah.
No.
And so, but there are I believe strict requirements around blasting that the town has. And so I don't know those off the top of my head, but it does happen. And so there are standards about when you can blast, who you have to notify, et cetera, that if for some reason we did need to do that, then we would follow all those requirements.
Yeah, given the topography
Yeah.
and the way the site slopes away from all-wheel drive and North Salem Street down, I don't foresee the need to do that.
Yeah. And it was farmed for so many years too,
Yeah,
right? Right, Bob? Yeah.
okay, that's good.
Um,
You're right about the buffer, by the way. I double checked it. Type 15 foot is the requirement.
right. The next question from Karen is, will construction trucks be utilizing Britley Way? Um, had in place as path to construction. No, that's not our intent. And we can talk about adding. I know in some cases we've added language to that effect. We can discuss doing that here because we don't want construction traffic, going through the neighborhoods either.
Yeah, the road, the connection there on, I don't know what the name of that street is, the stub road. They won't open that stub road until we're virtually finished.
Right, right. Um, Javier asked, townhomes and higher density can support affordability, but they can also become low quality, high impact projects if not designed well. What commitments are you willing to make on quality of materials, architecture, and long-term durability beyond the bare minimum? So I keep hearing the word bare minimum, and I want to clarify that the process that we're going down with the PUD rezoning, the entire point of that process is to add zoning conditions that are above the UDO requirements in Apex. So the UDO sets design standards and requirements for all projects in the town. And when you go through a PUD rezoning process, you are working through all the additional conditions that you're applying to the site. So we'll have probably a 15, 20 page text document that sets forth conditions that are above the UDO requirements. And so there will be in that document things like architectural commitments, and again, environmental conditions. And we don't have those yet because, again, we haven't filed our case, but we will, we're working on those and we'll include them in our submittal. And then they'll be reviewed by town staff for several months. And town staff will recommend additional conditions and additional commitments to ensure quality. Um, I will say, sometimes affordability is at odds with some of the architectural requirements because by nature of the way building works, if we're making the product as expensive as we possibly can, then it's really difficult to make it affordable. And so that's part of the discussion too. And so we're trying to balance both of those aspects as we work through the process. Um, the next question is, what is the proposed timeline to complete construction? We don't have a set construction timeline now, but sort of mapping out the timeline. I think the rezoning process, if we file December 1st, will probably take at least 6 to 10 months, just as an estimate. And then after we get rezoning approval, we'll have to go through site plan and subdivision, which will probably take, what, Bob, another 6 months at
Yeah,
least.
6, 7 months.
And then we'll go through construction drawings after that, which is probably another 4 or 5 months. And so we're probably 2 years out at least from breaking ground. You think that's accurate, Bob?
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
aggressive,
Yeah.
probably. And then construction's another year after that, probably.
Right.
3 years probably till you start to see houses.
Right. So the next question is from Michael. You mentioned the developer will have to widen Salem Street. How far down would that include? Only the frontage on the parcel of land? Yes. So it would be for our street frontage. And part of the reason for that is because, when you move away from our site, and you start talking about widening in other areas, then you're talking about taking property from other landowners that aren't part of our project. So that's
Yeah,
difficult. Yeah.
the what you see right there where your cursor is,
Yeah.
maybe, yeah, right there. We will match that section through the entire frontage of our sites. It'll be
Right.
widened to match what's in front of that neighborhood, with the exception of if we have to add a turn lane or a deceleration lane or anything like that, will be over and above that. But at a bare minimum, it will match what you're seeing right now in front of your neighborhood.
Right. The next question is, will the apartments be condos or leased via an apartment management company if the latter has one been selected? Um, in the rezoning process, actually under North Carolina law, we're not allowed to distinguish between um, the ownership of the units, apartments, if they're owned or leased. But the plan is for these apartment buildings to be rental apartment buildings. And no, we don't have a management company at this stage. Again, we're still at least 3 or 4 years from construction. It's still a long time before we'll be at that point. Um, the next question is on the right in, right out. I believe Bob said there will be a left turn allowed to turn in on Street A. That's correct. Yeah. So when I was talking about right in, right out, I was referring to this intersection. But you're exactly right. What Bob was clarifying is that at this intersection with Street A, um, there will also be a left in permitted, but not a left out. Is that right, Bob?
That's
So
correct.
yeah.
So if you're headed from downtown toward 64 and you want to go into, say, the commercial that's in here, you could turn left onto Street A, and that prevents people from wanting to turn left on Britley Way to get into the project.
right. Um, the next question, well, I don't know if it's a question, but housing types does not address affordability. Please address that. The residents care about this. So we've got a couple of different questions about affordability. I know one of the last comments was concerned about the the look and the overall state of the housing if it's affordable, and then I also know other people want it to be affordable. And so I do think that the housing types affect affordability in a positive way. That was not meant to say it's the end all be all, but we are evaluating different options for affordability, and we'll talk with affordable housing staff with the town as we move through the process. So that's part of the rezoning process too, is that the town's affordable housing staff will comment on our application and then meet with us to discuss different options for affordability. Um, the next question is the local public schools are already over capacity. What type of assessment do you plan to conduct to account for this? So school capacity has been an issue in Apex for several years. Fortunately, the county has made big strides in opening new schools to address the growth. And so a lot of schools have been a lot of new schools have taken the pressure and the caps off of existing schools. As part of our application, we fill out a Wake County Public School System form with our planned unit count and our planned construction timeline, roughly their estimates. And then that form goes to the county, and then the county issues a letter with the schools that this project is districted to, stating whether those schools are capped or whether they're not capped and have capacity, or whether additional school construction is anticipated to address capacity concerns. So that is also part of the process. Um, the next question is, there's some historic significance to Apex for certain properties in the site. Will that be considered in naming streets and complexes? Yes, I believe that it will. We've discussed some of that broadly, but that'll, the street naming and things like that will occur later on at site plan and subdivision. So that will be after rezoning when we talk about things like street names and what those names can be. So. Um, Javier asked, how does your plan meet the intent to ensure compatibility with surrounding land uses and neighborhood character rather than just maximizing unit count? Um, Again, we've added townhomes in several locations here in the southern portion of the site to try to address the transition down to existing single family neighborhoods, and we've tried to locate the more dense areas to the northern portion of the site. If we were trying to maximize density, we could have we could file a plan with all multifamily units with across the site, or I mean there's several other different iterations, but we tried to include a mix of housing types that the land use map is asking for, and then orient them in a way that's mindful of the existing neighborhoods. What type of commercial businesses would you expect to be in those offices? Something that would actually benefit the town, or more insurance offices? Um, we don't have, again, we don't have uses for the non-residential portions of the building. Um, what we will do is in the PUD text that you'll see after we file, there will be a list of non-residential uses that are permitted on the site. And so then the town staff will comment on those uses. Often they ask for certain uses to be removed, or additional standards to be added. And then those uses will be the uses that are permitted on the site. The actual tenants won't be selected for quite some time. But I know this particular developer has a ton of experience with non-residential space and leasing that space. And so the idea would be to select quality tenants over quantity, or other tenants that might not fit here, but quality tenants that sort of activate the space, and improve the overall development, and draw people there. Um, the the next comment is so 475. This is from Ron. So 475 properties with typically two vehicles per property. That's 950 vehicles, most of which will be commuting from employment. Um, that's again, that's all included in our traffic study, and we're not disputing that there will be additional traffic generated by the project, but it will be studied and is being studied, and there will be recommendations um, for transportation improvements. Um, the next question is specific to the green areas designated on the map. Is there a chance those will change, or will those remain environmental sanction? So those they could change slightly throughout the rezoning process, and the final RCA areas are not platted until subdivision, so that happens later. But I think because of the location of the pond and then the stream, it's likely that this will remain, generally how we're showing it now. Is that accurate, Bob?
Yeah, I wouldn't see it changing, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
Um, the next question is, does the town requirement include sidewalks on the west side of Salem Street? Um, yes, it actually includes a 10-foot side path on North Salem Street, so
Yeah.
wider than a typical sidewalk.
And all-wheel drive as well. Yeah.
Um, the next question is, you say that you're phasing down when you get closer to single family homes. Please explain why you're proposing placing multifamily homes adjacent to single family homes on Charlie and Downs Lane. So I think Bob, you can speak to this too. But that site is that area of the site is in an interesting location because it's got single family homes on one side, and then a large car dealership on the other. So really intense use on one side, and then lower intense single family on the other. And then actually there's only one residential lot that shares any property line with MF3. And so I believe that was the thinking with putting the multifamily there, is that it's closer to all-wheel drive. It fronts on all-wheel drive. And also there's limited shared property lines with the subdivision to the west.
Yeah, and with the addition of that cul-de-sac, which has a 100-foot diameter, Uh, there'll be no building within probably at least 125 to
Right,
150 feet of that property line.
right, be over here. Um, the next question is, will there be, this is from Conrad, will there be a meeting where we, as residents, have actual input on these plans? It seems ridiculous to add more than 400 families to a neighborhood burdened by two schools where you add thousands of cars to an already busy neighborhood. So again, this is the first meeting where you can provide input, and that's what we're doing now. And there will that's the way the entire process is designed is to have public input. So after this meeting, there will be staff review. We're available to talk about the project at any time. Staff, you can also reach out to staff. Then we'll hold a second neighborhood meeting where you can also provide input. Then there will be a public hearing at planning board where you can provide input, and then there will be a public hearing at town council. So there will be several more meetings where you can provide input on the project. Um, FYI, we've asked police department many times to monitor the dangerous speeding on Britley. They come with marked cars, so obviously people aren't speeding when they're monitoring. But please know we already have a real need for speed bumps on Britley. Hopefully you will have better pull than us to make Britley safer. Appreciate that heads up, and we're happy to help however we can. I know that there's a separate process. For trying to get speed bumps that I think it sounds like you're mentioning. But we're happy to be a part of that, later on in the process when we build these connections, if it helps, going to the town to try to get something done on Britley. So, um, Terry asked if the pond is found to be structurally unsound, would the land still remain part of the 20 to 25% conservation area? That's a good question, Terry. Bob, you can answer that, but I think even if this pond had to be drained for some reason, this is the lowest point of the site, and so we would still probably have stormwater there. Is that right, Bob?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, most likely, even if you drained the pond, there would be wetlands under the pond. So I don't foresee we have to have the resource conservation area, whether it's a pond with water in it or it has to be drained and regenerate back to its natural state. Either way, we wouldn't develop that area.
Right.
The intent
Um,
is hopefully to keep it because it is a amenity to the site.
right. The next question from Javier is if council asks you to reduce density or preserve more open space and wetlands, what specific changes would you commit to tonight? I wouldn't commit to anything tonight because we still have to go through the full rezoning process. And the process is set up to essentially weigh all of the different policy considerations. So, we'll get comments from transportation that'll ask for improvements. We'll get comments from affordable housing that ask for affordable housing. We'll get comments that ask for architectural conditions. And so our job through that process is to balance what we're hearing, and to make commitments that allow the project to still be viable, but also meet the policy goals of the town. And so, I couldn't commit to anything tonight without going through that process. And I think the process is designed to to result in a case that meets the policy needs of the town. And I think with recent cases in Apex, the town has seen that happen. But it does require that we go through the process. So, sort of front ending it and guessing, what we would do, 6 months from now after we've heard from all stakeholders, staff, and council, is really difficult to do. Um, the next question is who's responsible for rezoning approval for this development? Apex Town Council. I see someone answered that, so thank you. Um, Next question from Francis. As you get further in the planning process, please consider the privacy of the people who back up to your new townhomes. I'm a big fan of mixed use developments. If done right, they can add a lot to a community. Please do this well so that it adds to that and does not detract from the community. Appreciate the comment, Francis. We'll certainly, talk about privacy and how we're laying those lots out, and how we're envisioning they'll be laid out adjacent to the neighborhood. and agreed on mixed use projects. I think that that's been the town's long-term vision here. And I think this particular developer is a good fit for this site, and for doing something here that's vibrant and that people want to visit. So, um,
Yeah, I'll just say that I've lived in Apex for 16 years and um, driven past this site almost daily, and I know how important it is. And as a development team, me as a designer, our first meeting was with the planning department to get their feedback on the importance of this site and what they would like to see here related to this gateway into downtown. So we fully understand how important the success and attractiveness and vibrancy of this project is. And it's incredibly important to the developers that we're working with that this is successful. So we appreciate your comments and we agree with you how important this site is.
I appreciate that, Bob.
Yeah.
The next comment from question from Javier is: are the townhomes going to be built exactly 15 feet from the property line? No. So first we're showing a 20-foot buffer here, and so but that's just a perimeter buffer. If you can see at the back of the existing lots to the south, there's no buffer at all. And so that perimeter buffer on our site will be undisturbed and it will be owned by the HOA most likely. And so the lot lines will not start until after the buffer. So you'll have the buffer and then the lot lines will start. And then there will also be a rear setback. And the townhome, has to be located, a certain distance from the rear property line. And so there will be more separation than that in that location. The next question is: how do you plan to match the current aesthetic of the existing neighborhood? So we haven't finalized, any sort of architectural design yet. The buildings have not been designed, but as part of the process, we will work through architectural commitments with staff. And I will say staff in Apex is particularly focused on the aesthetics of the buildings and how they fit in with existing development. So that'll definitely be part of the process.
And
Um,
as part of the first submittal, we
yeah,
will have representative or sample uh, images of what the product types will look like.
yeah. Thanks, Bob. The next question is from Kim. You spoke about roads and traffic, but not traffic lights. Explain how many and where, please. Um, so again, we don't know yet. The potential signalization or installation of traffic lights is something that is part of the TIA. And so that study that we'll file on December 1st, and then staff will review for an extended period of time, will recommend if any intersections need a traffic signal. And so that's still very open-ended. I'd hate to tell you, well, we think this intersection is going to have a signal, and then it turns out that it doesn't. So that all that information will be part of the results of the TIA. Next question is: can you remind us who the developer is? Yes, it's Merit Group LLC, MERIT, and it's Paul Mugnana is the main developer contact. And Paul has had a long career developing sites in Wake County, in Apex, Holly Springs, and so he's excited about this project. And I think as Bob mentioned, understands the importance of this site as someone who's been in the Triangle for many years. Um, the next question is: has this developer done other areas near Apex that we can see, so we know what his developments look like? Yes, we can put together some examples. Bob, I don't know if you know anything off the top of your head. Um,
We certainly could come up with some examples that
yeah.
are similar. Yeah.
Um, the next question is from Sasha. There are streams all over this property as shown on GIS and the very first map you showed tonight. Are you planning to pave over those? No, we're not planning to pave over those. We generally are not allowed to pave over those, and there are required buffers around streams that we can't impact. Um, part of this process, just so that you know, when you look on GIS, the blue line, the literal blue lines that are shown on GIS, are not always jurisdictional streams. And so, as part of the process, we do work with the Army Corps, and the Army Corps determines whether a particular stream is jurisdictional and has to be buffered. So that's part of the process that we go through. But no, we're not planning to pave over streams.
Yeah, well, as part of the process, we'll have a wetland biologist
Right.
who goes on site and analyzes all of the wetlands and streams. Then they meet with the Army Corps of Engineers, and they also meet with the town of Apex, and all
Right.
three of them concur on what needs to be buffered. So we're in that
Right.
process now.
Right. Um, the next question is from Scott. For a neighborhood like this, is there any requirement to have any amount of common green space? I drive through villages of Apex South to get to Lidl, and I find that there are a lot of families living there, and the kids just play in the street. I've seen a really positive community impact on neighborhoods that have even a small common green space. That encourages engagement among neighbors and creates a safer place for kids right outside their home. We, I think we agree with everything you said, Scott, and so we will have green spaces and common spaces. So I mentioned the roughly 25% that will be set aside as resource conservation area. Apex also requires play lawns, which are spaces where neighbors can assemble. I think some can they have programming sometimes, Bob? Like or
They
are they
can't have
mostly
they can't really have programming, but
yeah,
this site will have roughly an acre of play lawn, which is
right,
basically flat lawn area to kick a ball or throw a frisbee, maybe some
right.
benches, some sidewalks around it, street trees, some landscaping, but generally an open area to just play.
Right, right. And that's also our hope, partially for the existing pond, that will be sort of an open green space, recreation space, um, that will be an amenity to residents and help folks gather. So, um, the next question is, will you take into consideration when planning street lighting in the development, how this may impact Britley homes? We can already see Ford lighting in the distance. Yes, we will absolutely engage and plan in the process of planning the street lights. Actually, the town has an updated lighting ordinance that I believe was adopted maybe a year or so ago. And it's very, very granular on what you can do and where, and it requires, near residential areas, cut off fixtures with several other limitations. And so, we'll have to meet those ordinance requirements, and we're not requesting any modifications from those. So, yes, that'll be part of the process. And if you're curious, you can find that online too in the town's UDO, the lighting section. Um, the next question from Javier is Apex is near a nuclear power plant, and we've all seen how strained traffic already is in this area. Will you be seeking direct input from local first responders to ensure that emergency evacuations, EMS, and other critical response needs we may not be aware of are fully addressed in your plan? Yes, it is the short answer. So, as part of our project, all different town departments will comment on our application. For example, streets have to be designed to a minimum standard to allow emergency access, and fire access and trucks. And so all of those things are part of the review process. And so we will not get a project approved that doesn't have sufficient emergency access. So um, the next question from Conrad is if the rezoning is denied, would there be plans to pivot to a smaller scale, single family development similar to Haddon Hall? I don't know what the plans would be if the project were denied. I don't think, I don't know exactly what the purchase price is, but I don't think given the value of the land here, that a single family project with larger lots would be feasible. And also it would be inconsistent with the town's land use map, and so it would also be hard to get approved. And so I think that would be unlikely. Um, Next question is, thank you for the preliminary meeting. Look forward to walking to a coffee shop in a few years. Appreciate the comment, Francis, and we'll hopefully get some good tenants here. Um, Kim asks, are you emailing this recording to everyone that signed up so we can inform others of this meeting? Yeah, I'm happy to share the recording. If you could email me and request it, we'll get those out. It's probably, we've been going for about over almost an hour and a half now, so it's probably a pretty heavy file. So it's probably easier to send, if you request a copy, then we can share that. Um, I'll put my email here just in case folks didn't get it from the slides. Um, and then I'll put my phone number too. Um, Okay, let's see. A couple more questions. Will Charlie and Downs Lane be open into the development, or will it remain a dead end? And so our plan is for it to be a cul-de-sac, and then a pedestrian connection into our site. So just essentially a walking trail as you come into our site. But as I mentioned, the town uh, requires this stub street to be connected. So staff essentially have to approve our request not to make the connection, which in the past they've been very reluctant to do. The town normally wants to see connectivity to existing stub streets, vehicle connectivity, and so we're showing a cul-de-sac now, and no vehicle connection, but the town may push back on that after we submit the case. Um, the next question from Javier is, what post-construction monitoring will you support for stormwater performances, traffic, and environmental impacts? And what remedies will you consider if those impacts are worse than predicted? So in terms of post-construction monitoring, um, I'm not sure how long after construction we're talking, or exactly what the intent of the question there is there, but sort of taking it in parts. Stormwater ponds have to be inspected like 100 different times to ensure that they're graded correctly, draining correctly, and they are continually monitored even after the projects are constructed. And those ponds are generally owned by the HOA, and so if those ponds get out of compliance, the town can issue fines or take other actions against the HOA, just like they would in any other subdivision, including Haddon Hall, if there were stormwater issues there. So in terms of traffic, I don't know that there's any ongoing traffic monitoring. We'll agree to certain transportation recommendations that will go in our rezoning conditions, and then the sort of protection there for the town is that the project can't be built unless those improvements are constructed. And so, we can't get building permits and COs unless we construct those improvements. So that's how everyone's protected there. Um, the next question is, let's see, how many units will there be total? I think we went through 270 multifamily units and 205 townhome units, and those are just the maximums in the zoning. So, the final unit count will be when we actually lay out the site. So, most households have at least two vehicles. Traffic on Salem Street and the Peakway is already bad. Yeah, I think we understand the traffic issues in this area, and we're certainly not trying to say that this this development won't bring any traffic. It'll certainly have, new residents at Apex and cars, and they will drive places. But all that is being taken into account as part of our TIA. And that's what we'll work through with staff is how we can improve the situation through road connections and other improvements that we'll be constructing. So that's looks like that's the last question I've got in the chat now. Um, there's another question from Conrad. Are you able to share how this development is being funded? Uh, I don't know the specifics of the funding, and also there's no, a lot of times at this early in the process, the construction, for example, isn't funded yet in the way that projects have several phases. They've got to go through years of zoning and plan review before any construction happens. And so sometimes, the entitlements are funded differently, not sometimes, almost all the time. The zoning and the plan work is funded differently than the eventual construction. So no, I don't know that. Um, uh, so the next comment is why not build single family homes that are more similar to Haddon Hall? I think I've covered that. It seems like developers are trying to cram as many people as possible to increase their profits without considering that you are lowering the quality of life of the people living here. I don't think that that's true. I don't think I think most developers and this developer is not trying to lower anyone's quality of life. They're trying to develop a project that's feasible, that meets the town's long range plans, and checks a lot of the policy boxes that the town's looking for. So, um, okay, well, that's all of the questions we have in the chat. We appreciate everyone coming. Again, it's just the start of the process, and so you couple days, you have another question, just reach out to me or Bob, and we'll be happy to answer and also help you follow along as we move through the process. So appreciate you coming and hope everyone has a good night. Thanks.